It's Thanksgiving week, so we're doing the show early. Welcome everyone to the chat. Tyler, you got a story for us? You want to kick it off and just set us up, and I'll play it here.
Sure. This story is about the Boston Globe's recent kind of shift in subscription pricing, showing kind of how it's paid off.
I mean, I love looking at these major metros. Everything's going to be at a different scale. You got to keep that in mind for the small weeklies. What they're doing always makes a lot of sense to me. So let's look at this model here.
How effective are promotional subscription prices? Today, we're highlighting a piece by William Turville over at Press Gazette about the Boston Globe's strategy of promotional subscription pricing. The article, "You Need to Charge to Survive: Why the Boston Globe's $1-a-day digital subscription policy is Paying Off," discusses a strategy the Boston Globe has been trying throughout 2020 and 2021 to increase their number of new subscribers. The new subscription model involved lowering introductory prices and hoping enough people would stick around afterwards to increase revenue overall. Because we're moving so many people to full price at the end of their promo period in such a condensed period of time, it still meant a period of increased cancellations, which we were expecting, said Tom Brown, the Globe's VP for Consumer Revenue. Here are a few of our big takeaways. The Globe's new model involved a promotional subscription of $1 for 6 months of access, which would then revert to standard pricing that amounts to around $1 per day. The Globe's subscriber base has grown by 80% in the past year, with digital subscriber revenue up almost 30%. While the standard subscription price is higher than the industry average, Globe readers generally support the paper because it demonstrates where revenue is being reinvested in journalism. While promotional offers like this do tend to lead to a high percentage of people opting out once the trial period ends, sometimes a high enough influx of subscribers can more than compensate for the loss. Because of this, Our Hometown allows publishers on our WordPress platform to experiment with multiple subscription models and find what works best for their newsroom.
Walk us through this first one, Tyler. How does this apply to local news publishers?
My takeaway is just like, if you give people enough incentive to just subscribe in the first place, you just need to get them in the door.
Right.
And as long as you can, in that time frame, the big thing they went into in the article was it used to be a trial period of 4 weeks, and they extended that to 6 months.
I know.
And it didn't impact the level of unsubscriptions. So they still lost at the same rate with the extended period, but they gained way more.
Widening the funnel as wide as you possibly can. I mean, I've never heard of a deal like that. $1 for 6 months. I mean, I paid on that level for the introductory promo for New York Times, but I think that's the cheapest I've ever seen. And then $1 per day, that's a big jump.
Yeah.
So that's, whatever their churn rate is, it's probably pretty significant. But like you said, the fact that it didn't increase with the wider funnel, just much better value proposition up front. That's really encouraging. What do you think, Vera? Any comments on this? Would this be something that we could suggest to small newspapers, weeklies, $1 for multiple months? I mean, right now we're committed to this model of 99 cents for the first month and then increases to full price. Or if they commit to the full year, it's 50% off for the full first year.
Definitely think that it could be used in play. Think about the value that they're getting. That's one. Like Tyler said, market your incentives to keep them. But I also think it's an incentive to the publishers because you're gaining their information. So that way, after they're expired, or if they drop off or cancel, you can approach them with a coupon or something to draw them back in.
If I were to recommend this to a publisher, I would probably test it in a targeted way. So don't promote this on the website at first, but we could use the newsletter coupon system to hit up anyone that's a never subscriber that's on the newsletter list, because those are the least committed people. They've never subscribed to the paper. That's widening the funnel pretty good. And using
Could this be A/B tested by chance?
Could this be tested?
Like A/B tested?
Right. Well, now you're talking about a smarter paywall, possibly. Or are you thinking about A/B testing in the newsletter? You could do that.
Yes, the newsletter, so that way you can do like half of the audience gets this deal and compare it to those that didn't get it.
Yeah, you could definitely do that. I think, to me, it's like this is obviously going to get more people to sign up. I mean, if it didn't, That would be kind of weird. I feel like if you're going to go in and say we're willing to offer this to anyone, but we don't want to have it be public, then I would just send it out to everyone on the newsletter list that isn't a subscriber and just see what hits you get. Because what would you compare it to? Just the regular promo of $1 for the first month?
That's what I was thinking. And that way you could see the traffic on it and how many, what the churn rate is, who's dropping off.
If you were to do it, you would want to, make sure that they know that the normal price is this, but we're offering you this special price. I mean, I think if you needed to prove it to yourself, you could do an A/B test and see what is the ratio of conversions. Ratio of click-throughs would also be interesting to know first. How many people click on the coupon, and then how many people actually act on it.
Now, could you add restrictions to that? Let's say $1 for 6 months. I mean, You said it yourself. That is one heck of a bargain.
Right.
And it will draw people in. But you don't want to give away all of your content for $1.
I mean, my first reaction to that is kind of like, it's great, but we're not going to actually give you everything. I mean, I think the philosophy with this is you want to get your foot in the door and have the best first impression you possibly can. And you're just going to basically write off the first 6 months as we're not going to make any money really there. This $1 is not a drop in the bucket, compared to what it costs to produce the news for 6 months. So, this is really just for them to have some skin in the game, to get a credit card in the system. You could still do it for free, I think, and still require a credit card. I think it makes sense to have some value on it, but then give them all access. But it's an interesting option. Certainly some publishers might like that. No archives, maybe. For the first 6 months, it's purely just the new news. The archives are a small proportion of the traffic anyway, so they wouldn't be losing that much. But then when they become a full subscriber, now you have access to the archives. So that would be the reason to do it, I think. That's actually a good point.
You could also do auto-renew after the 6 months, too.
Yes.
So that way it charges the card after that trial period is over.
Yeah, exactly. I think that's essential. You can't just be giving away 6 months with no commitment. The $1 commitment is nothing. It's really about getting that credit card in there. Exactly. So yeah, they revert to the full price. So for a daily, they're charging $1 per day, $1 per edition. You could think of it that way. And that's great for digital. Wow. Okay, second point here, Tyler. Unpack this for us a little bit and apply it to our customer base.
I mean, essentially what it's saying is they more than doubled their subscriber base during the first year of this trial period.
Wow.
And that after the ones that dropped off were going to drop off, their revenue was still up by 30%. So that's showing that raising the price didn't negatively impact their subscription revenue. They didn't have enough people falling off that it hurt them.
So they basically had this pricing, maybe it wasn't specifically mentioned, but I'm assuming the pricing of $1 per day was an existing rate that had kind of been established on the website, and then they introduced this great promo.
And I think the article specifies that this was mostly done during early COVID last year. And so they noticed an uptick in interest, and they wanted to get, like you said, people's foot in the door while they were engaged.
Wow.
And then a lot of them stuck around.
There's so much to learn here. I mean, they're teaching us about kind of marketing 101 is to just develop the relationship as quickly as you can, even if it's just kind of transient thing. Getting them to pay is taking it to the next level. They're giving you a lot of information. People could do registration walls, if they don't want to go all in with something like this, but just to get yourself closer to the subscriber base. I mean, to grow by 80%, a lot of those people are probably still on the 6 month intro, right? I mean, we'll see them drop off at a certain point, but I mean, those numbers are still really good. I doubt that they're very inflated at this point. They're probably stabilizing. I think we'll just have to see long-term trends. Because what was the timeline on this? It started in 2020.
So basically around last fall is when the first initial wave all ended at once.
Okay, so they are actually well into it. Yeah, so this seems reached equilibrium like on the Mather economics graphs. Subscriber base grew by 80%, but revenue is up by 30%. So what's the disconnect there? It's because
It's because of the amount of subscribers that are falling off every 6 months, I'm guessing.
So 30% is awesome.
I know.
Yeah, essentially, like even if you're losing more subscribers than you had, you're still making more revenue from the ones you're keeping.
Because the revenue increases, like 150 times or something. It goes up so much from the intro deal, $2 a year to $1 a day. It goes up.
And also, just in terms of revenue, while you have that 80% growth, let's say roughly every 6 months, you're still making ad revenue off of those subscribers that are coming onto the website.
Exactly. Yeah. By engaging with these people, that's an awesome point. Even if 80% of these people on the promotion drop off, during the 6 months that they paid, you're engaging with them, they're going to engage more with the site. Exactly.
So your page views, your ad views are all up 80% for every 6 months.
Right. And so who knows how many of those people, would have just been casual readers of the Globe, maybe using the meter up each month at most. During those few months, they use it much more. And then, maybe they stick around as a subscriber. But if nothing else, it's kind of like what we were talking about, the whole continuum of reader revenue. What can we make off of each reader and each visit? The metered paywall is there so we can monetize casual traffic, and we have a paywall obviously for the most engaged parts of our audience. So these themes just keep coming up, and how you got to strike the right balance. Tyler, did they say anything about, I thought this was an interesting point, does the Globe make an effort in their editorial coverage?
Yes. So a big thing that was in the article was they stressed that a lot of this funding was helping to keep their investigative division running.
Which is what they're super famous for. I mean, there's been movies made about
all the stuff that was Spotlight, right?
Spotlight was a great movie, yeah. Right. I mean, that was Pulitzer Prize stuff, yeah. Yeah,
so this is the thing they stressed. This is why we charge this much. It's to fund this level of reporting.
Okay, so they're putting in the time and the effort to really sell themselves in the editorial department. That's really great. Each of these points are really high yield. I mean, implementing even one of these things would help with subscription revenue, I'm sure. That's fascinating. We'll have to keep an eye on this. Look at other promotional offers, steep discounts like this. What if we sent out a newsletter to our customers about this? We could send out this video and say, this is what they're doing at Boston Globe. Anyone want to try this in their newsletter? A targeted super discount.
Yeah, just someone willing to be a case study.
Exactly. We'll set it up for you. We'll do all the targeting. These are people that are just on your newsletter list anyway. They've been on your newsletter list for who knows how long. We could look at all that data and kind of make the argument. Let's go for it. Let's try to convert them with a really great Black Friday deal or whatever you want to call it. All right, so a big part of what we're focused on is this turnkey strategy for monetizing website traffic, first of all with an ad network, getting that in place, and then fueling the revenue generation machine that is the ad network with traffic. And just getting as much traffic from any source that we can, any legitimate source, local platforms like Facebook, Twitter, wherever people are from our community, wherever our audience is, we want to pull them in. And so social media auto post is our solution to that. We have several different plugins that we can use depending on how you want to get the news out there. And there's this ongoing debate at the company, and we're going to invest in the next couple of months in researching this and coming up with some concrete answers and strategies for when is the best time to publish on social media, specifically on Facebook. This is a story by Buffer, which is basically a service that's the same as social media auto post, but it's a third party. And they try to, at a real general level, give you the answer to this $1 million question. When is the best time to post on Facebook? So let's open it up to the group, I guess, for a second. If you guys were marketing some event that you want to do in town, let's say, how would you go about doing it? When would you think is the best time to post on social media? Let's just start there.
If it's a local event, I would go at least 2 weeks out.
2 weeks out. Okay, right. So the timing relative to the event is important. But specifically, is there any time of day that you know of that would be good to reach people in your zip code?
I mean, specifically, I'm thinking of the events that I would do in town and that kind of thing. I would generally aim for Thursday, Friday afternoons, or maybe a Saturday, Sunday morning.
So yeah, with the event type stuff, it's going to be different. That's the point, because if you're looking at something like evergreen news content, you're a publisher, that can really come out at any time. If you've got an event, it's very important when it comes out on Facebook, as early as possible, probably in that case. And with news, breaking news in general, that's a different standard. It's as soon as possible. No matter when it happens, you want to get it out on Facebook. So just those three categories of content, completely different times that are probably ideal to post. That's kind of the thing that you get from all these articles. I'm going to just save you all the time. We've done a bunch of research ourselves and found many different sources claiming to say the best time to post on Facebook. Right here, they're saying best time is between 1 and 3 p.m. during the week and on Saturdays. The thing that they're doing here is they're trying to offer general marketing advice that applies to anyone. And if you get so general and so widely applicable, it kind of starts to lose its value at a certain point. I think this is probably true. If you look at Facebook's overall aggregate data, this makes sense when people would be the most active, because I guess they're talking about the US, and you think about all the different time zones. Between 1 p.m. and 3 p.m. Eastern is when most of the US is online. But you're not trying to communicate to the whole US as a local publisher, so you gotta look at each case differently. That's kind of the conclusion that this article actually comes to. They did a nice job. They tried to make some general observations, but then they said there really is no universal best time to post on Facebook. So doing this kind of research on your own, you're going to kind of hit a wall, because there is no time that they can tell you without knowing your business. So that's what we're going to try to do, is try to help you figure out what's best for your specific newspaper business, because everyone's going to be different. So that's really the take home that I got from this article. When should you post on Facebook? Let's look at the strategies for figuring out how. Don't just ask the question, give me the time frame. Ask the question, how do I figure out what's best for my audience? So you can look at what the data tells you, or when it's relevant for your content. So let's look at what the data tells you. When it comes to marketing and digital strategy, the best data is always your own. And Facebook has tons of data available on all page admins and owners. So let's take a look at that. I've got the Facebook page for our hometown up here. And this is just a Facebook company page. I'm assuming everyone has a Facebook page for their newspaper at this point. If you don't, you want to set that up. It's a very quick process. It's a great way to connect with people that are already on Facebook, and then we'll talk about the strategy to get them to the website. But once you have the page set up, you're going to have all these admin tools. When you get to the manage page, you can come to here from your personal profile. I think the best way is to go up to the Facebook icon, and then you got some shortcuts here to the pages you manage, and then you go to insights, and then it's going to bring up all these different types of insights I can learn about. We're going to look at posts. This is the only place that I could find this data. It might be elsewhere, but if they have enough data, if you just created this page, they won't have the data yet. But if you've been online and you've got some followers, then they can start to tell you when is the best time to post for your business. I think it's looking at basically a conglomeration of the people that follow our page now. When are those people online? When we post to our page, our followers are going to see it first. But it's also good to know this, because I think we want to get more followers like our current followers. We want to grow that. So if our current followers are online at this time, maybe these potential followers are also out there. So if we're running ads during this time, it might be a good way to get more likes. This is our results. I'm sure it's different for newspapers, maybe more concentrated when the e-edition comes out, when the newsletter is sent out. They might see more activity on Facebook. This is just our followers' overall behavior, so it's not really necessarily when they're looking at our page. It's just when they're on Facebook. All that I would take away from this is I wouldn't want to do it after 9, before 5, but other than that, this just kind of looks like it's all the same to me. That's one thing that you can use to make the decision, among other things.
I think just the big thing that I would stress, and this goes for any social media, is it all depends on what type of content you're posting.
Yes.
That's the big thing. Context. That's the most important thing.
We all know that experience of flipping through a news feed. Just because it's there doesn't mean I'm going to be interested in it at that time. So it is about getting it to them when it's relevant. So let's talk about the second point. This one's less scientific. You can't get numbers for it and make decisions based on that. But if you look at your content, think about when is it going to work best. They're saying some is best in the moment. For example, news about a sports game, the final score. There's no reason to delay on that. Breaking news, also highly relevant for our customers. But I wouldn't generalize it even there. Just because you're in the news business doesn't mean it's all breaking news. So we should think about segmenting by the content and the category, because there is going to be some stuff that's more evergreen. And you also want to think about the fact that it's probably not the best strategy to put every single story from the website on Facebook at the same time, because you got to assume that Facebook's going to filter that and say, okay, we'll choose this fraction of the posts that they just put up. We'll test those and see how they do. If they do okay, we'll show the other stuff that they just threw up there. But if you're posting it spread out, then I feel like Facebook's going to be more inclined to just put it out there and promote it a little more. That's pure speculation. Vera, you've worked with a ton of publishers on it. You've heard all different angles. And like I said earlier, we've got 2 plugins where we can do dump of everything as soon as possible. As soon as it appears on the website, it goes on Facebook. Or we can spread it out. What's your opinion on it then, Tyler? Like, which would be better for driving traffic?
I generally don't know. I think the window that we were looking at, that we're getting traffic on, is probably the right one to be looking at in general.
Anytime in that range is reasonable.
I would say so. And I mean, just personally, from my experience in consuming news, 5 to 8, and then maybe like 11 to 1 are good times, because that's just when I'm checking in on things.
Yeah, and then specific, like a little bit more, 11 to 1. Like
morning and lunchtime.
Yeah, it makes sense. So you could accomplish that with the plugin that we have, where you could just schedule by category. Well, there's different things we could do. We could either order the posts so that the news are at the top and they come out first on the website. At the website level, everything comes out at the same time, but they are like a few seconds apart. There's a time
staggered.
Slightly different. Right. And the news stories are first. And I'm really getting into the weeds here, but it's interesting to think about, because think through automating anything. There's always going to be things that trip you up. And I think this is the best approach. It's the most simple, because then it will just set up a queue.
You send out posts in the same way that they're uploaded to the website, essentially.
In the same way. Yeah, I'm just thinking, is there a way that we could like have them come out every hour in the morning and then every 15 minutes in the middle of the day during lunch, and how the plugin works? It's so new and it's still being modified.
And that's the new plugin that's much more automated than our previous scheduling tool, right?
Exactly. Yeah, the other one we had to schedule. You could schedule also, so it wasn't necessarily a full dump at one time, but you could have it auto publish everything. And because of the way we publish on the website, they would come out all at the same time on Facebook.
Right.
Alternatively, if you were self-publishing, and this was really only good for self-service publishers, as they upload the stories to the website and schedule them to go live on the site, then they could also schedule it to go on Facebook. They could create that effect of the daily publishing on Facebook, but it was amazing.
Right.
I didn't like that, because I always want to be an automated solution whenever possible.
I mean, I think basically, personally, between the 2 tools, I would say it just depends on how big your team is and how many resources you have to devote to this.
100%. Some people actually are going to benefit from the one that requires a little bit more manual input for it to work in a very specific way, because they're a larger organization. They have a more refined and established social media strategy. Maybe they're using Buffer or something that requires them to schedule it. They could just use ours, and then it's all integrated with the website. So you're exactly right. I mean, this is what we've kind of concluded after several meetings, that we don't want to discontinue the old plugin. We want to still offer it. So really, it's all under social media auto posts, and we're not calling it the plugin by name. It's just, this is the solution, and whatever your process is, we'll give you the right plugin. Now let's look at some more headlines here. We can breeze through these pretty quick. But this just from Subscription Insider. The New York Times finishes Q3 with 2.38 million paid subscribers. They're talking about total subscribers, I believe this is made up of, look at how many digital-only news subscribers there are.
Oh, wow.
Only other. Oh, other is like all these cooking, newsletter, the games section, crosswords and everything that you can just subscribe to that.
Oh, yeah. I know a bunch of people that just subscribe to Crossword.
That's so funny. So they've done it in a really interesting way. Again, I think the strategy of the New York Times has been establish a paywall model, separate out all this stuff that used to be in it, keep calling this the digital subscription, but then create all these add-on subscriptions that they upsell you on. So they've kind of unbundled it and then created all these different verticals to increase revenue. It's really smart model. And they've built this whole thing around newsletters. That's all that it was. They didn't have their own, I don't think they started with their own separate website for the cooking section. It was just a newsletter that was, covering a category, and then they separated it out. If we have time, we'll talk about some other interesting developments in newsletters for local news. So this is that big headline, and I guess I like to point out that this is a story that we're following long term. Over a year ago, we published this that showed promise for digital subscriptions at the New York Times, but main headline was right here. At this point, for the first time ever, back in September 2020, digital revenue had exceeded total print revenue. So they're talking about subscriptions and advertising. So that doesn't really line up with this graph, which shows digital subscribers, not revenue. Yeah, I think the revenue is going to be closer to 50-50, but it's probably slightly more digital at this point. The Mather stuff, again, way more digital subscribers paying less than print, but this print audience, this small print audience actually represents like up to 50% probably of their subscription revenue. I mean, you can understand why publishers they don't want to let print go because it's still like a nice cash source for them. They just got to migrate those same subscription prices to digital as much as they can. Just get the digital subscription price back up there because they've kind of underpriced it traditionally. We've got to backpedal a little bit there. The guys over at Zine 101, I know them from a lot of conferences, but this is a cool video that just breaks down the process of converting casual website subscribers to paying. That's their whole thing, and they just do a lot of videos on this that just break down the process so that publishers just can realign their thinking a little bit because they may not be used to thinking in these terms for their print audience. This stuff is so metric driven, and you can start to build a relationship just by getting them to sign up for a newsletter. They talk about building the relationship with them increases the chances that they'll pay in the future. So just a lot of interesting points that we talk a lot about in our videos as well. We actually have worked with them in the past. They build WordPress plugins. They have a paywall plugin for WordPress, and also like a self-service advertising widget where advertisers can just type in their ad and it just basically pops up on the homepage immediately, like authorized advertisers. So kind of a cool self-service tool. I think the publisher, Grant Hamilton, was using that at one point. Okay, so Vera, we had some questions on forms this week.
I had a customer who wasn't getting their submissions. And basically what we did was we went into settings and then notifications and added her email address. You would go to forms, select the type of form that you want to edit, go to settings and then notifications. Okay. And then you're going to get what says admin notification. And this is what you get when somebody posts in the form. Right. You go to edit and then look for the email, which is right here. And I went ahead and inputted her email address. Then she wanted to see, since she wasn't getting the notifications, how to view what people had left. And what I did was I walked her through. I said, you select which form you wanted to view, and then you go to entries. And it is recorded here, every person who's ever posted to this form. So she's got 12 items. It looks like some of them are tests. For instance, you click the person who posted, you can see their suggestions in this case or comments, and that way you're caught up.
Just take a step back for a second. What Emily has done here is created a form where her audience can suggest stories or just suggest improvements to the website?
That's correct, yes.
Okay, all right, that's great. That's a great idea. but she wasn't set up to receive the notifications. So those things were just coming through. So yeah, that's something that we need to make sure we ask whenever we set up a form. If a publisher doesn't think to tell us, I would assume whoever asks us to set up a form, they should be receiving notifications. But the notifications are just a reminder, really, like you said, it's all here. So if you just remember to check your queue, these are all the unread when they appear kind of dark like that.
Yeah, and it also says it right here. That there are 9 unread. I think the thing stems that this may be one that she created herself and may not have known where to go to add her email.
Yeah, it'd be nice if there was some type of a reminder in the form, but yeah, this is for more self-service publishers that are in there doing stuff on their own. Make sure you've thought through the whole process. How is this form going to work? You think about that a lot when you're designing the form, like what fields to ask for. But a big part of the whole experience for the customer is quick response. And so we want to make sure that they're getting that and you're getting notified. Great. Thank you for bringing that up. Google signs 5-year deal to pay for news from AFP, which is a France press association. This story is just the result of the pressure that we're seeing, and it seems like it's mainly in France and Australia. And this is the biggest licensing deal struck by the tech giant under the French law. The story just explains that these news organizations, they've been losing ad revenue to the online aggregators such as Google and Facebook. They've been complaining for years that using their stories in search results or their other features without payment is not fair. And these laws that are actually being passed in France and Australia are coming from the media lobbyists. They're actually getting something done. This is how you fight back against monopolies. You got to align governments. So these are 2 of the leading governments in this whole fight. I wanted to bring this up because I think we talked about it a few weeks ago, how there was something in the mix, but it looks like it's actually happened. So I think it's also going to be like the issue in Australia where whoever's in this agency, France Press, will get paid, but not every newspaper's in that group. There's a lot of small independents. I don't know exactly what this represents. I know that was the issue in Australia. That was the concern there. I don't know if that's also a thing here or if it's like the National Newspaper Association where virtually everyone's in it. What do you need to do to be in this association? I mean, like with our press associations, there's, membership fees, but our associations aren't doing anything like this. Not to put them down, but they're not trying to negotiate rates with big tech or anything like that. So this could be just like a completely different organization that's nothing like what we have in the US. Another big one that came out Monday, editor and publisher already did a story on. I was impressed. They gathered all these industry experts together to talk about Alden Capital's bid for Lee Enterprise. What does it mean? Some of them had some really interesting things to say. I would suggest watching the whole thing if you get a chance. Steve Waldman is the president of Report for America. And, he talks a little bit about how there could be antitrust issues here. He's more on the government lobbying side. But, Lee Enterprises is a huge newspaper group. And we've been covering Alden for a while now. And how they're constantly being characterized as this vulture capitalist coming in to kind of pick the bones of a dying business and not revive it, but just maximize profit. But you guys know that there's a large vendor that is owned by Lee Enterprises and does most of their website. So I don't know how this is going to impact them, one of our major competitors.
If we got a minute, I'm totally out of the loop on this one. I don't understand what's going on.
Remember, Alden Capital bought Tribune News Group. This is basically a venture capital firm.
So what they're doing is they're basically running ghost newsrooms.
Yeah, they hollow it out. The interesting thing about them is they're like the purest form of capitalism. They actually are doing what they're supposed to do really well. I think vulture capitalists is a good term for them because vultures are really good at what they do.
Yeah.
They can survive off of nothing, like garbage.
Right, so, and they're an important part of our food chain, believe it or not.
Exactly, it is part of the ecosystem. So you
can
say,
ecosystem. That's what
there's a if there's a newspaper like a huge beast in the wilderness that's just not really fit for the current climate, is this not such a bad thing that they're coming in and picking the bones and just cleaning up like these newspapers that just are failing. They're losing money every year. And then they come in and they cut the costs. They basically accelerate the decline and they pull out the money. I'm not saying that it's a good thing, but I think it is an interesting part of the ecosystem. And something needs to happen in these communities. Either the paper needs to turn around and become more digital centric. They need to start doing more digital content, podcasts and things like that, or someone else is going to sweep in.
Right. And those, the vultures are the first ones to sweep in.
Well, yeah.
So how do publishers find us? I mean, that's how do we let publishers know that there is an alternative to these vultures? That seems to be the thing that we focus on.
Right. I think how I would pitch it is let's not question whether this is good or bad, but let's question how we can avoid it being necessary for
right. Because I think publishers, we ran into that with a couple of main publishers years ago, where it wasn't something that they wanted to do, but they felt they had no alternative. They had to sell, or they were going to lose their house, basically.
So Lee Enterprise right now, and all these big corporations that are bought up, I mean, they're nothing like our customers. Let's make that clear. We don't work with corporations like this because a lot of them have their own CMS that they've built and things like that. So we don't have experience working with these publishers.
So they're basically buying umbrellas.
It is, absolutely. Okay. It's an umbrella, it's a corporation. And so, they're making the decision to sell. They talk about in this, why would they buy now? Because they just bought these Chicago umbrella group. And they think, maybe it's because they want to buy it before the price goes up, after the decline that we've seen from COVID or something like that.
So they're buying the umbrella companies, and then the little guys that are under that umbrella are part of the package, and they're the ones that are basically just shoved under the rug.
Yeah. They bring in the accountants and they look at every publication and just cut the stuff that they don't need. It doesn't seem like they're figuring out a replacement. They're just cutting it like a true replacement.
Exactly.
Coverage.
It seems like they're stripping everything and then lumping all of the existing resources into one thing.
That's exactly right. And I've heard this many times. They talked about this at conferences. They would make them more regional, so they would still have as much news in the paper so that they could still sell the ads and subscriptions, but it's less stuff about the town.
And pretty soon, you're getting a 12-page newspaper that only has one page of news that's relevant to you. So you drop your subscription. So there goes and it's just a snowball. And I think the heart of everything, or the whole point of these venture capitalists, and yes, they are good at what they do, and kudos to them for being business people, but there's no passion for the community newspaper whatsoever. They have no intention of saving the paper.
It's clear from their track record, and I think if you just think about the economics of it, they're obligated to maximize profits. So
it's kind of like a let them eat cake. Let them go to the town hall if they want to see the Weagles.
But I like Tyler's point about how can we just avoid getting to this point?
I was just thinking, we've kind of seen an alternative to this, and that was a few months ago when Gannett sold a bunch of papers back to local owners.
In that case, it went through this process of being bought by a large corporation, and then it came back out into the wild as an independent with new owners. I mean, in that case, what basically happened is you got new owners.
Right, and again, Gannett is a newspaper company, so it's kind of different because at least they have newspapers in mind. They are still, number one, focus is business. They run a business, so it was in their interest, their best interest, to sell.
All I was going to say is that these corporations come in and they bring all this capital and they just buy out tons of communities. The alternative is what we are seeing in some cases. There's digital-only publications popping up instead. Why don't online-only publications come up to fill in the gap here before the newspaper is run out of town and you're just left with the news desert? You know what I mean? That seems to be what happens. It's like the newspaper's there, and then all of a sudden it's out of business and there's nothing left.
Right. There's not an attempt to pivot at any point.
Yeah, exactly. The newspaper didn't pivot, and there was also no competition coming up that could fill it and thrive now that the newspaper is no longer there.
If somebody has, and I'm sure there are people that have the idea and maybe the energy, they don't know.
The revenue isn't there, basically.
Well, and then they start thinking, okay, I have to go to these town meetings. I have to go to these sporting events, or I have to hire somebody. And then, they just start thinking and they talk themselves out of it, basically.
I don't know if you've ever met with publishers that come to us, with a online only idea. Mm-hmm. And it's just, they're super motivated, really enthusiastic people. It seems like they're going to be great to work with. And then you never hear from them again.
Right. They start chasing their tail instead of moving forward. Yeah.
Exactly. I mean, we're trying to start our own little news organization at our hometown, but we've got this whole business around it that supports it. Our real revenue is through our service, so we don't need to make money off the news that we're creating through these podcasts. To get to that point right out of the gate, to look at it from a practical perspective like that.
But, sometimes it doesn't make sense either, because if you look at the other side, how easy is it to post to Facebook? How often are you posting to Facebook?
Yes.
It's not.
There's no business model there, though. That's the problem with that.
True. But why can't you make your own website and just kind of, post news instead of what you had for dinner, your new pet's coat?
I mean, we're getting down to the basics here. This is good stuff, though.
This might be way off topic, but would it be possible to reverse publish from Facebook?
Yeah, I mean, I'm sure that you could come up with a way to do it. Are you thinking then you would just be kind of free digital and then have a print product?
For the people that don't want the resources to even touch a website, if we could pull everything from Facebook and throw it onto a site for them with no extra effort, that might be something to look into.
Reverse publishing from Facebook. Yeah, I mean, here's one thing to think about. The newspapers are still, we talked about earlier how the print revenue is out of proportion with the digital. And so the newspapers still have that print revenue to ride on. It's going down, but a digital-only startup, they can't go to a Rolodex of advertisers that are already in their queue and just, upsell them for something. I mean, they've got to build brand new relationships to sell any ads. So it's really got to be a subscription model. Is that the answer?
Oh, I think you can get by with an ad network.
The ad network, you're going to need 50 to 100,000 monthly page views, which is like 25,000 to 50 visits to really have a drop in the bucket there. I mean, to pay yourself, you're going to need way more than that. That would cover the costs of the website. It's difficult to start any business, and to start a media business in the current landscape is really tricky. I mean, your idea though about Facebook or anything, like it could be, I don't know.
Just trying to reverse engineer a business model onto these platforms that weren't designed for.
We're seeing businesses pop up wherever they can. I recently started getting emails from the Salt Lake City podcast. It's purely a podcast. We also see it with newsletters. They're just newsletters. They don't have a website. So that's kind of what you're talking about, I guess, Tyler. Like a newsletter would be a place to start. I think better than Facebook. Yeah.
I agree. I love newsletters as a marketing tool and as a means to get out there. Everybody reads newsletters, or at least gets them in their email.
I mean, even if you're using Facebook, people that are on Facebook have email addresses. So
that's right. I want to just wrap it up here, I guess, with this one thing. This is kind of more concrete, something that we could give to our customers. I saw an article about how this Axios local, Axios is a media brand. They've been around for a while. I don't know exactly what their original thing was. I think
they're just starting to come into their own finally.
They seem to be expanding into local news. So this is cool because this is kind of the other option that I was alluding to. Rather than coming in and buying out a newspaper and hollowing them out, to just bring in some competition.
I think I did a blog post on this.
Oh, that's where it was. So they're expanding this. They were in like 14 cities, and they're adding like another 12, and Salt Lake City was one of them. So I signed up, and I just think this is a good thing that our publishers could learn from. Something like this. Not everyone's going to read it.
Absolutely.
Yeah, this is really valuable. I mean, this stood out to me. There's not a lot of information in here.
It's such a good model because they're also making sure to hire like a good dozen or so individual journalists in each area to provide content for it.
Again, it's the opposite solution to a problem that we clearly have, an unsustainable news business. Do you kind of just scrap it and pick the bones clean, or do you start fresh and actually hire more people in the area? And then, who knows, maybe they could kind of partner with the newspaper one day and join forces, because they have the same goals. They're trying to fight the centralization of power with these hedge funds or big tech. They're eating everyone's lunch. If we could just programmatically get that message in everyone's newsletter sign up and subscription sign up. When they buy a subscription, they're now on the newsletter list.
And contacts.
Add them to contacts. Yeah.
Well, no, I mean to have the contact information always available. That's one thing that I always look for, because you don't know if these people are legitimate. Are they based in the United States, or are they in, Europe?
Oh, so you're talking about like how to contact Axios,
right,
with all this.
Yeah,
that's definitely anti-spam 101, putting your physical address in there. For some reason, putting a street address is good. And then also having the unsubscribe really clear, that kind of thing. But this is good because they haven't actually started yet. They're launching in the new year, so they made sure, don't let our email get flagged as spam.
I get a newsletter every day too. It's called 1440 Daily Digest. But what it is it's similar to this. Mm-hmm. But it's already obviously up and running, but it's excerpts of news from different publications like the New York Times, the Washington Times, Washington Journal, and different things like that. So it takes you to those websites, and it'll even say there's a paywall or there's not a paywall, but it's kind of nice because you get all different views, and the newsletter's free. They do have ads. It's a nice newsletter though.
I like looking at examples like this because to really have a successful aggregation service, you got to be really good at marketing, because you're not creating any unique content. So newspapers have an advantage on top of this because they're the only ones reporting this. But I'm sure that this sign-up process is super well thought out, and there's like no holes or awkward like confirmation pages that pop up. Okay, then they give me this message. I can read today's digest right away. Great idea. We should have a go-to.
If you like what you see, look at that. You can share it right from here.
And then read today's digest, and I'm sure I got an email confirmation. Let's see if they do anything like what the other one did. Okay, so again, a link to read the most recent edition. They've got a guide. Oh, look at this. It's the exact same thing. It is to be certain we arrive in your inbox. Follow our guide. This is going to be, okay, here's Gmail, Yahoo, what to do. This is really good idea. Yeah. You gotta steal this. I love it. Look at this. They got AOL. What the heck? Mac Mail. Every possible. This is great customer support. Look at this. Yeah. Okay, that is a great one to end this office hours on. Thanks for watching Today in News Tech, the podcast covering innovation in digital journalism. You can follow us on Facebook, Twitter, and subscribe on YouTube or any of your favorite podcast apps. We'll see you tomorrow.
At our hometown, we help newspapers build WordPress websites, design native apps, and develop digital subscription models. If you are interested in a free prototype of your publication on WordPress, go to ourhometown.com and click the